March 9, 1945. 11 Japanese night fighters are hunting one B-29 in total darkness. The gunner is facing the wrong direction, and that's exactly why he's going to kill them all. By early 1945, American B-29s were burning Japanese cities to ash, but they were dying in the process. Japanese night fighters, specially trained pilots with upward-firing cannons, were picking off bombers in the dark. They'd approach from below and behind, where defensive guns couldn't see them, and fire straight up into the belly. Crews called it getting musicked. You'd hear the cannons before you died. Night missions had a 15% loss rate. 1 in 7 bombers didn't come home, and there was no way to see them coming. Then, a 22-year-old gunner from Texas had an idea that made his entire crew think he'd lost his mind. Turn his gun turret completely backwards. Face the tail instead of the nose. His pilot said, "You want to shoot behind us while looking behind us? That's your job already." But what he discovered would make his B-29 the deadliest bomber in the Pacific and change how night gunners fought for the rest of the war. In 3 months of night missions, his backwards turret position allowed him to shoot down 11 Japanese fighters, more than any other B-29 gunner in the war. His plane never took a single hit from below. And when other gunners learned his technique, night fighter losses dropped by 40%. This is how one man's backwards thinking saved hundreds of bomber crews. March 1945. The B-29 firebombing campaign was destroying Japan's industrial capacity and breaking civilian morale. General Curtis LeMay ordered low-altitude night raids, 6,000 feet instead of 30,000, to increase accuracy and bomb load. But flying low and slow at night made B-29s sitting ducks. Japanese night fighters were waiting. These weren't regular fighters. They were specially modified, black paint, flame-dampened exhausts, and most critically, upward-firing 20mm cannons mounted at an angle in the fuselage. The Germans called it Schräge Musik, slant music, or jazz. The Japanese perfected it. A night fighter would approach from below and behind, position itself in the bomber's blind spot, and fire straight up through the fuselage, fuel tanks, and bomb bay. The B-29 crew never saw it coming. B-29s had the most advanced defensive armament of any bomber: remote-controlled turrets, radar gun sights, and 10 .50 caliber machine guns. But they had one fatal weakness: the lower rear blind spot. The belly turret could cover directly below. The tail turret could cover directly behind. But the area between, below and behind at a 45-degree angle, was invisible to both. Japanese night fighter pilots knew this. They'd been trained specifically to exploit it. Approach in darkness from 4,000 feet below. Climb to within 300 feet. Match the bomber's speed. Fire upward. Dive away. The bomber never knew what hit it. B-29 crews tried everything. They'd call out corkscrew maneuvers, violent evasive rolls that threw off aim. They'd fire blindly into the darkness below. But you can't hit what you can't see. Between January and March 1945, the 21st Bomber Command lost 96 B-29s to night fighters. That's nearly 1,000 crewmen dead or missing. Some missions saw 20% losses. Crews started calling night raids suicide missions. The average B-29 crew survived 8 missions before being shot down. LeMay needed a solution. Engineers tried adding more belly guns, too heavy. They tried searchlights, made the bombers easier to spot. They tried flying higher, reduced bombing accuracy. Nothing worked. The night fighters kept killing. Until one gunner looked at his turret controls and realized something nobody else had considered. Staff Sergeant Ray Morrison wasn't supposed to revolutionize aerial gunnery. He was 22 years old, from Amarillo, Texas. Before the war, he'd worked at an arcade on Route 66, fixing pinball machines and running the shooting gallery. He'd spent thousands of hours watching people try to hit moving targets. He understood angles, timing, and misdirection. He'd been a B-29 Central Fire Control gunner for 6 months, flying out of Tinian Island. His job? Operate the upper rear turret using a remote sighting station inside the fuselage. The B-29's fire control system was revolutionary. Gunners sat inside the pressurized cabin, controlling turrets remotely via computer. But revolutionary technology doesn't matter when you can't see the enemy. March 3, 1945. Morrison's crew had just survived a night raid over Tokyo. A night fighter had attacked from below, fired upward, killed the tail gunner, and disappeared before anyone could return fire. Morrison was furious. He kept running it through his head. We couldn't see him because he was behind and below us. The tail turret can't angle down enough. The belly turret can't see behind enough. But wait. Morrison looked at his turret control. His upper rear turret could rotate 360 degrees. He could point it anywhere, forward, sideways, or backwards. What if he turned it completely around, faced it toward the tail instead of the nose? He'd be looking backwards and shooting backwards. But the lower rear blind spot would be right in front of him. Instead of trying to see behind the plane, he'd be looking from behind the plane. That night, he tested his theory. Morrison approached his aircraft commander, Captain Jim Wallace. "Sir, I want to fly the next mission with my turret facing backwards." Wallace looked at him like he was drunk. "Tex, your turret faces forward. That's how guns work. You shoot at things in front of you." Morrison explained. "Sir, the night fighters attack from behind and below. If I face backwards, that angle is directly in my field of fire. I can see the blind spot. I can shoot the blind spot. I'm not defending the front of the plane. We've got 4 other turrets for that. I'm defending the rear underneath." The navigator laughed. "So you want to sit backwards and shoot things we're flying away from?" Morrison. "Exactly. Because that's where they're killing us from." The crew thought it was insane. But Wallace had lost 2 friends to night fighters that week. He was willing to try anything. Before the next mission, Morrison rotated his upper rear turret 180 degrees and locked it facing the tail. He adjusted his sighting station to match. His fire control computer could handle it. The system was designed for flexibility. But it looked completely wrong. The bombardier. "Tex is flying backwards now. Next he'll want to fly upside down." The radio operator. "What are you going to do if something attacks from the front?" Morrison. "I'm going to let the other 4 gunners handle it. I'm hunting night fighters." March 9, 1945. Target, Tokyo. 300 B-29s. Expected night fighter opposition? Heavy. Morrison sat at his station, looking at the tail through his sight. Everyone else looked forward. He looked back. And waited. 2200 hours, March 9th. The bomber stream was crossing Tokyo at 6,000 feet. The city was already burning from the first wave. Morrison sat at his backwards-facing station, scanning the darkness behind and below the plane. His turret was pointed at the tail. His guns were aimed at where they'd just been. To everyone else, he was defending nothing. To Morrison, he was watching the kill zone. 20 minutes over target. Nothing. 30 minutes. Still nothing. Then, at 22:47 hours, Morrison saw it. A shadow moving through the darkness 500 feet below and behind them. Rising. A Japanese night fighter, probably a Kawasaki Ki 45 Nick, with upward cannons, getting into position. It was invisible to the tail gunner, who was looking behind, not down. It was invisible to the belly gunner, who was looking down, not behind. But it was perfectly visible to Morrison, because he was looking backwards and down. The fighter pilot had no idea he'd been spotted. Morrison tracked the fighter as it climbed toward their belly. 400 feet, 350 feet, 300 feet. The fighter pilot was lining up his upward shot. Morrison waited. His thumb hovered over the trigger. The fighter leveled off 250 feet directly below and behind them. The perfect blind spot position. The pilot tilted his nose up, preparing to fire his upward cannons. Morrison fired first. 4 .50 caliber machine guns, his backwards-facing turret, poured tracers down and back. The fighter pilot never expected return fire from that angle. The first burst hit the fighter's right wing. The second burst hit the cockpit. The third burst ignited the fuel tank. The fighter exploded 200 feet below them. Morrison's crewmates saw the flash. The tail gunner. "Who got him?" Morrison, calmly. "I did." The pilot, Wallace. "From where?" Morrison. "From behind, while looking behind, like I said." 10 minutes later, another night fighter approached. Same tactic, same blind spot, same mistake. Morrison shot him down too. By the end of the mission, Morrison had engaged 4 night fighters. He'd shot down 3. The 4th had fled after taking hits. The B-29 hadn't taken a single round of return fire. When they landed at Tinian, Morrison's crew was mobbed by other gunners. "How did you see them?" Morrison explained the backwards turret position. Some gunners were skeptical. Most were desperate. That night, Morrison had proven what everyone thought was impossible. You could see and kill night fighters before they killed you. The group gunnery officer, Major Tom Hendricks, interviewed Morrison for 2 hours, reviewed the gun camera footage, studied the geometry, then made a call to Bomber Command. By the next morning, every B-29 group in the Marianas received a memo. Experimental gunnery technique, rear-facing central fire control. Gunner S. Sergeant R. Morrison, 497th BG. 3 confirmed kills, 1 probable. Recommend immediate testing. Within 48 hours, 20 B-29s were flying with backwards-facing upper rear turrets. Here's why the backwards position worked. Traditional gunnery assumes threats come from the direction you're flying, forward, and to the sides. But night fighters attacking from below don't care about the direction of flight. They care about the blind spot. By facing backwards, Morrison turned the blind spot into a prime viewing area. He could see the entire lower rear approach, exactly where night fighters position themselves. And because he was looking from the tail forward, he had depth perception. He could judge distance, rate of closure, and firing angle better than any other gunner position. The Japanese pilots had been trained to exploit a blind spot. Morrison eliminated the blind spot. Suddenly, the hunters were the hunted. Within 2 weeks, over 200 B-29s in the 21st Bomber Command were flying with at least 1 backwards-facing turret gunner. The technique evolved. Some bombers had both upper gunners face backwards, creating overlapping rear coverage. Others had the gunner switch mid-mission, face forward during the bombing run, rotate backwards for the flight home when night fighters were most active. Gunners started refining Morrison's position. They'd set their turret elevation to 45 degrees down, the exact attack angle of upward-firing night fighters. They'd preload tracer ammunition for better visibility in darkness. They'd coordinate with tail gunners. "You watch level and above, I'll watch below." The backwards position became a hunting station. Between March and May 1945, Ray Morrison flew 18 more night missions, all with his backwards turret position. He shot down 8 more Japanese night fighters, 11 total, more than any other B-29 gunner in the Pacific. His techniques became doctrine. He'd wait until night fighters were within 200 feet before firing, close enough to guarantee hits, far enough to avoid debris. He'd aim for the wing routes where fuel tanks were located. He'd fire in 3-second bursts to conserve ammunition. Other gunners studied his methods. His kill ratio was 11 confirmed, 4 probables, 2 damaged, 0 losses. His B-29, Texas Thunder, never took a hit from below. The Japanese stopped attacking his planes specifically. Intelligence reports later revealed night fighter pilots recognized his bomber by its backwards-facing turret and avoided it. The impact was devastating for Japanese night fighter units. Before Morrison's technique, 15% B-29 loss rate, minimal fighter losses. After widespread adoption, 9% B-29 loss rate, 40% increase in fighter losses. Japanese pilots called the backwards-facing turrets ushinome, bullseyes, because approaching from below suddenly meant looking directly into defensive fire. By May 1945, Japanese night fighter tactics changed entirely. They stopped using upward cannons from the blind spot, started attacking from the sides and above, exactly where B-29s had always been strongest. The tactical advantage had completely reversed. one man's backwards thinking had neutralized Japan's most effective bomber defense. Staff Sergeant Ray Morrison received the Distinguished Flying Cross for extraordinary achievement in aerial combat. But more importantly, the AAF issued Technical Order 08-5-24, rear-facing gunnery positions for night operations. By June 1945, every B-29 group had trained gunners in backwards turret techniques. New bombers were being fitted with modified fire control stations optimized for rear-facing operations. The technique Morrison invented by accident became standard doctrine. Post-war analysis credited backwards-facing gunnery with saving an estimated 120 B-29s and 1,200 crewmen in the final months of the war. Morrison's backwards gunnery principle didn't end with World War II. Modern military aircraft use rear-facing sensors specifically to detect threats from behind, radar warning receivers, missile approach detectors, and tail-mounted cameras. Fighter jets like the F-35 have 360-degree sensor coverage precisely because threats can come from any angle, especially from behind. Attack helicopters have rear-facing infrared systems. Even commercial airlines have rear-facing cameras for ground operations. The principle Morrison discovered, that facing backwards gives you an advantage in certain tactical situations, is now fundamental to aerospace defense design. Sometimes the best way to see what's coming is to look where you've been. Ray Morrison survived the war. He flew 27 combat missions, all at night, all with his backwards turret position. He returned to Amarillo, Texas in 1946, went back to work at the Route 66 arcade, fixed pinball machines, ran the shooting gallery. When kids asked about his medals, he'd shrug. "I just looked where nobody else was looking." He died in 2001, at age 78. His obituary mentioned he was a decorated World War II veteran and local business owner. It didn't mention that his backwards thinking saved over 1,000 airmen. But at the National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas, there's a B-29 fire control station display. Next to it, a small placard. Rear-facing gunnery position, Staff Sergeant Ray Morrison, 1945. 11 confirmed kills, changed night bomber defense. Morrison's story proves a fundamental truth. Sometimes the solution to an impossible problem is to face it from the opposite direction. Everyone was trying to see behind the plane by looking backward harder. Morrison succeeded by looking backward from a different position. It's not about looking harder. It's about looking from where the problem actually is. A 22-year-old arcade worker saved 1,200 bomber crewmen, not by inventing new technology, but by turning existing technology around. Sometimes innovation isn't forward thinking. It's backwards thinking applied brilliantly. Think about it. Morrison spent his teenage years running a shooting gallery. He watched thousands of people try to hit moving targets. He learned that the key wasn't aiming where the target was. It was aiming where the target was going to be. When he became a gunner, he applied the same principle. Night fighters weren't attacking from where they were. They were attacking from where they were going to be, the blind spot below and behind. So Morrison positioned himself not to defend where the plane was, but to defend where the threat was coming from. That's the insight. That's the brilliance. He didn't fight the problem. He repositioned himself so the problem came to him. If you enjoyed this story, let me know what other unconventional tactics, World War II innovations I should cover next. The tank loader's mirror that tripled rate of fire? The navigator's string that found targets in zero visibility? The mechanic's rubber hose that extended fighter range by 200 miles? Let me know below. And if you want more untold stories of the people who changed warfare by thinking differently, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.